it's the spooky season again.
Mm.
It's time for our Halloween horror extravaganza.
Oh,
Essentially, it's just us, recommending books that should
that's true.
scare
Our
the crap
show is a horrific event, so here we go.
It's horrific.
Mm.
Every show is horror, but this time we're going to dedicate.
The books to back it.
My first book that I want to talk about is by Mr. Paul Tremblay.
Ooh, nice.
Full of Ghosts. And this book is really a cool book because it's yes, it's a scary book and it talks about demonic possession, but what it really does is it's about this girl who is 23 and she's writing a book about her troubled childhood because 15 years earlier her sister Marjorie was behaving in ways that the family came to believe she was possessed.
Ooh.
So what do they do in the 2000s? They create a reality TV show called The Possession.
Oh,
And yeah, no, it's true. And the show only lasts like a few episodes because it gets so out of hand. And this is like a flash forward in time, and she's now like looking back and trying to put together what happened. So it kind of has this dual timeline, but it really is awesome because it not only is it truly a good horror story, and but it's about like perception and how we remember things, and it also is like an indictment of pop culture.
God, yes.
oh nice. Beautiful.
He balances. Paul is brilliant. If you're not reading Paul Tremblay, you need to be reading him. I can't wait to read the Paul Bears Club, which is his latest. But Head Full of Ghosts, he balances all these different elements. And a lesser writer, it would fall flat. But it's absolutely so well constructed, and it's like nothing you've ever read. I know we say that every now and then, but this truly is like a really unique spin on the horror genre. And again, it's largely based in the reality of, and the perception that we have as people and memory and all this stew that comes together, and it'll leave you with a head full of ghosts.
Ooh.
Dude, I wrote that down. I didn't even know that was on the
Right.
radar. That sounds really cool.
I love the whole story twist on how he presents that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so unique. It's so unique. Everything this guy writes is unique, but this is
Reality TV.
I was gonna say they made a reality TV show. I actually would want to see something like that with
Right.
like.
Well, and that's how it would go in today's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, our kid's possessed. Call a priest. Call a producer.
Sell it.
Call both.
Are you taping? Yeah.
Maybe the producer should be here first so that we get the priest entering the house.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Dude, that's cool. I like it. Like it.
Yeah.
All right.
Are you good with that? Is that your your read here? Well, since I'm the oldest here, I'm going to go old school because I'm going to mention two. I won't go into great detail because a lot of people already kind of know where the storyline goes. But I grew up a huge Ray Bradbury fan, and I got into a lot of his sci-fi type stuff as a kid, and then happened across Something Wicked This Way Comes. And I want to say it was like 1960 something, like early 60s. And it follows the life of two young boys who stumble across a carnival coming to town. And you start getting the carnies involved with supernatural. It's kind of a nightmarish twist on horror / fantasy. It's but the whole premise is these two boys are being targeted. Well, one in particular is being targeted by the lead antagonist. I'd have to look up his name, Mr. Dark, and he's targeted these boys to join the carnival. And the only way to join the carnival is you be tricked into it, and then you can never leave.
Huh.
And there's a lot of there's a lot of horror elements, but it's also kind of fantasy in a way, and it's scary because you're following these young boys, and you're just the angst of knowing that these two young boys are being targeted and how they kind of work their way through it and out of it is kind of really gut wrenching in a way.
One of the great titles of all time, too.
Yeah, right. I think it was based on a poem.
Yeah, by the pricking of my thumbs.
Double prick my thumbs. So that Something Wicked This Way Comes, I read when I was pretty close to their age, and it scared the bejesus out of me. The other one is a no-brainer, and the movie did it justice, right? The Exorcist. It was a 1971. I think it was William Blatty.
Yeah, William Peter Blatty.
Like, you start mixing in, religion and the whole idea of possession and things like that in a way. And so obviously the movie scared the crap out of me, but and for all of us readers, we know that the books are 99% of the time as good or better than anything they put out there. And so again, reading kind of this slow burn on this possession and how they try to save her, and you throw in the religious aspect and the demonic possessions. Like those two books for me were some really formative early horror reads that even as a older adult, still, like, I can't think of anything else that scares me more than those two.
Yeah, I have always been more terrified by the spiritual element than the big man with a knife or an axe. It's like when I would go see Halloween or I mean, Halloween's a great movie. Friday 13th, it didn't scare me on the level, on the existential level.
Yeah,
maybe it was just our religious upbringing that kind of added that extra product in there. But holy crap!
Yeah, two themes like stories are that really scare the crap out of me are like Contagion, like the bacteria virus stuff that kills you because you can't really fight against it, and the demonic possession, the Satan stuff. Because definitely as a kid who went to Catholic school,
right,
and that stuff being into my brain, like that scares me. Which is why it's a good segue, because I wanted to talk about these two crazy books. So it's An Exorcist Tells His Story, and An Exorcist More Stories is the follow-up to this. These books came out, they were originally published in the early 90s in Italian, and so they're by Father Gabriel Amorth, and they're kind of like autobiographies, so it's not fiction. Which is, these were some of the it's crazy. It's like some of the scariest books I ever read. So Father Amorth was an Italian Roman Catholic priest. He was the chief exorcist for the Vatican, and he performed, allegedly, he says he's performed 100,000 exorcisms.
Jeez.
So I think I read these. I remember hearing about these because I was like all into reading about demonic possession, just because I was very curious about it. I think I picked these up around the turn of the century, around like 2000, 2001, 2002, and devoured them. So anyway, so it's a demonic stories, the rituals, like the impacts on the people and the demons, right? Like the suffering and everything that the people feel, but also the demons that when they're going through the exorcism. And it's kind of like how he did everything. So it's like Exorcism 101. So it's really not meant to scare, or it's not gory. But what it does is it showcases like his extensive experience as an exorcist. Wow. And when I tell you, as a Catholic, God-fearing man, these were utterly frightening. But if you don't believe demonic activity, you're gonna have a hard time with these books. Like, so it's, if you don't believe any of that stuff, don't bother reading them. But if you do, you'll love these. Like in a freaky, scary way.
As much as you sin, it's got to scare you.
Right. I mean, you are on the verge daily.
We've all seen your interviews.
Right. But here's the crazy thing. I remember hearing that they were going to be making a movie about this, because it's a really cool story.
No kidding.
So I went and looked, because I was like, I don't remember if anything was made. And there was talk about Russell Crowe starring in it. Wow. Looks like they did make it. It's in post-production. It's going to come out in April of 2023. It's called The Pope's Exorcist.
Wow. Cool.
So,
all right.
I got those. I do have another one. Or Sean, do you have another one?
Bring it out. No, I was just going to say, speaking of Mike's classics, Frankenstein. If you haven't read Frankenstein, I mean, because I think a lot of people have just seen the movies and have never bothered to read the book. It's actually a really compelling story, and the horror in it, and Mike said this before we got on. A lot of the horror in it is the people. It's society and how they react to something different. There's a lot of themes about how we react to something we don't understand, and
right. We just demonize everything that we don't agree with or don't understand.
And it's also obviously about the hubris of science and medicine and things of that nature. Yeah. But one of my favorite things about this has nothing to do with it has everything to do with the book, but it's just the story behind the making, how Mary Shelley and Percy Shelley and the other poet, can't remember, drawing a blank, but anyway, they were having basically a slumber party, and they had a competition, and it was like, okay, everybody go off and write a scary story to try to scare each other. And she went off and essentially wrote the bones of Frankenstein overnight, and basically retold the story. And of course, she expanded upon it, I'm sure, later. But everything that really makes up Frankenstein, she wrote at essentially a slumber party to scare the other writers. I just think that's a cool story.
That's
maybe we have a crew slumber party and we all try to write a.
We tried that
classic horror story.
Slumber. I felt very I felt very uncomfortable with Mike's story during that slumber party. Very uncomfortable.
Well, and Sean was too busy fishing at midnight to go write anything.
That's actually the title of my story. It's Fishing at Midnight. It's horrific.
I think I have pictures of that.
Yeah, we've got many pictures and videos too.
Sean, where are you?
Sean, turn off the lights.
So Chris, you had another book.
I did. Here's quickly. Pivot. So here's the other one, right? The Devil Takes You Home by Gabino Iglesias, who I think at some point we should probably maybe invite on the show, maybe talk to him, because he's got some really, really good stories out there. So he's an award-winning author, which I didn't realize, or he was like, he's been nominated for some of the top, like the Bram Stoker Award, the Anthony, the Locust Award. So like he writes some really cool stuff. So this is a dark noir story of a desperate man. His name's Mario. He's tormented by bad fortune. He's haunted by the loss of a child. You get that pretty early in the story. That leads to a failed marriage. He's having all types of like money issues and whatnot. But there's a supernatural aspect of the story that's intertwined with the criminal underworld that he gets pulled into. That really got me hooked. But like what really like stunned me, and what the part it's in the beginning, obviously, is the moment that Mario, he sees worms crawling out of the head of a man he had just been hired to kill. And you're not supposed to have worms inside a living person. Well, the person just died, but like the worms just come out. I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And so that just compelled me to keep reading. So the story, it's filled with grief, poverty, racism. It's written in first person point of view. So you get, as readers, you get a really close personal view of the graphic violence. Like it's pretty graphic.
And what was the title again there, Chris?
So The Devil Takes You Home. I mean, the cover is really compelling. It's really good cover.
Nice.
And obviously the title is really, really good.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting things is, so some of the internal narration, because it's first person point of view, it's in Spanish. So you'll see, all of a sudden you'll see words that are written in Spanish. And I found that really interesting. My Spanish was kind of good enough to get, to translate it, but there were some I was like, I want to know the exact translation for this. So I would like stop and Google Translate and be like, oh yeah, that's really cool. But so anyway, so he's really talented. He's a gifted author, and he really pulls no punches with this story. And I think people are going to really like the criminal aspect of it, the supernatural aspect of it,
and the social commentary.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Well,
on that note,
that's our terrifying
Halloween.
Yes.
Halloween, recommendations, and we will try to bring more horror to you each show. That's our promise to you.
We do.
We will try to horrify you at least once a show.
If I'm on it, it can't be horrific. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit.
All right.
Mike will edit some horrific.
He does all the time. He edits it all out. I really appreciate that.
Half the stuff doesn't even show up.
Oh, it's so bad. I would look really stupid, and that's saying something.
Well, happy Halloween, everybody.
Yes, happy Halloween.
Have a good
Candy.
holiday, folks.